Do you know one of those days when everything seems to be against you? When you wake up tired and immediately start worrying about the day ahead. And during the day, nothing fun or exciting seems to happen to you. You probably had one of those days, maybe even more. But what if it's one of those days every day? Many people in the world are suffering from depression and anxiety. According to the World Health Organization, 300 million people in the world suffer from depression, with many of those also suffering from anxiety-related issues. Especially adolescents are prone to developing these disorders, and it has been associated with substance abuse, physical sickness, problems in school, and suicide. Research over the past 5 decades seems to point to a worrying trend, namely that more and more young people seem to be suffering from depression and anxiety. But what could be the cause of this increase? Before we dive into this question, we will take a closer look at what it means to feel depressed and anxious. When someone is suffering from a depression, they experience feelings of sadness and hopelessness and lose interest in activities they once enjoyed. According to the official criteria by the DSM-5, the individual must be experiencing 5 or more out of 8 symptoms during the same 2-week period, and at least one of the symptoms should be either depressed mood or loss of interest or pleasure. The other criteria are weight gain or weight loss, a slowing down of thought and a reduction of physical movement, fatigue and loss of energy, feelings of worthlessness or inappropriate guilt, diminished ability to think or concentrate, and recurrent thoughts of death. A phenomenon that is closely related to depression is anxiety. But what is anxiety exactly? We all know what it's like to be anxious. We can feel our heartbeats race, we start sweating, and we accelerate our breathing. However, anxiety is not always a bad thing. It's something that makes us handle threat. Imagine the first people on Earth, living by themselves with a lot of danger like tigers and lions. The experience of fear sharpened our sense, quickened our thinking, and activated our fight-or-flight response, so we could give attention to a tiger, prepare for a reaction, and provide protection.
Anxiety, however, can become a bad thing when our fear is no longer useful and it obstructs our lives.
According to the official criteria by the DSM-5, there are a lot of different forms of anxiety disorder. A few of them are separation anxiety disorder, specific phobia, and social phobia. While a person can suffer from either depression or an anxiety disorder, they also often occur at the same time. The presence of one or more disorders besides the primary diagnosis is called comorbidity. It seems that it's more the rule than the exception that the two disorders occur at the same time. Comorbidity estimates between depression and anxiety disorders go as high as 81%.
Now that we know some basic information on depression and anxiety, what are the risk factors for developing these disorders? We know that depression and anxiety are developmental disorders. This means that there's no single underlying cause to blame. Multiple aspects of someone's life can put you at risk for developing a depression or an anxiety disorder.
First, let's take a look at the physiological side of the story. While many perceive depression and anxiety as a disease of the mind, many biological factors seem to play a role as well. A distorted regulation of the stress system in the body seems to be one of the most important ones. The hypothalamic pituitary adrenaline, or HPA axis, is the mastermind behind our reactions to stressful situations. By releasing several hormones, people are capable of reacting in a way that is appropriate for the situation at hand, for example by fleeing when they see a bear. However, when the system is dysregulated, the body will be subject to an overflow of stress hormones. This oversensitivity might very well be the root for developing depression and anxiety issues. This system was very useful for ancestral parents because they lived in an environment full of threats. You might think these threats no longer exist and therefore the stress system will be less active, but the opposite is true. Not only tigers and bears trigger the stress system, but also social threats like being rejected by your peers or neglected by your parents. Such negative experiences are called stressful life events. Stressful life events are also a very important factor in developing depression and anxiety. Here we are not talking about a failed exam or a missed train. It's about parental loss in childhood, divorce, or social rejection and isolation. Research has shown that depressed people have 2.5 times the risk of experiencing such an event before the onset of depression compared to non-depressed people. Also, it seems that the loss of social bonds, for example through death or divorce, has the most severe impact on us, because they increase the risk of a major depressive episode more than any other major life stressor. It has also been shown that social rejection causes major emotional distress, which can lead to depression as well. Our environment hereby plays a crucial role. Do we perceive ourselves as the outliers or not? Feeling socially rejected or excluded doubles our chances of becoming depressed. Of course, everyone will experience a negative life event at some point, but not everyone develops a depression. This can partly be explained by the way you think about things, or with a more difficult word, your cognitive style. You tend to perceive a glass as half empty rather than half full, or just expect the worst out of everything. Situations get a lot harder to deal with. This feeling of hopelessness can lead to depressive and anxious symptoms. Not only the way you think is relevant, but also how long you keep thinking is important. Dwelling over how terrible you feel or what your spouse exactly meant with his comment will only extend your bad mood. Letting a problem replay over and over in your mind and repeatedly thinking about the negative emotions you feel is called rumination and is associated with depression and anxiety. And finally, genetics and personality are both important factors in whether someone will develop a mental disorder. Genetics always play a role. If your mother is suffering from depression, your chance of having it as well increases. Your personality is also relevant. Some people are more sensitive to social rejection than others, for example. You could say that genetics and personality can make a person more vulnerable for the factors that were discussed earlier. Besides stress, life events, personality and genetics, there are many other aspects that are relevant in the story of depression and anxiety. To make it even more complex, a lot is still unclear about which factor causes what and how they are all interconnected. However, it can be said with certainty that the discussed aspects are all important. Now that we know some of the developmental causes of depression and anxiety, how can we explain the current increase in the amount of people suffering from it? It is hard to pinpoint one direct cause of this. However, the social environment might have to do something with it. The world around us has changed drastically, especially in the context of technological developments. Human beings have become massively dependent on all forms of technology, whether it is for waking up in the morning, commuting to work, or after school leisure. Technology made our lives easier, but it also imposes risks on our mental health. Even when it gives us easy access to information and allows us to connect with others, extensive technology might very well be one of the causes of depression and anxiety epidemic that seems to be occurring in the Western world. In order to demonstrate the several negative effects that technology can have in day-to-day life, we will follow two people in their daily routine, Smartphone Sally and Smart Riley.
First, let's look at Sally. Just like her, many people grab their phone in the morning to check on their social media updates. Social media allows you to only see the highlights of others. This can become the standard that you compare yourself to. This might give you a feeling that your life is not good enough, or even worse, that you are not good enough. So what about Riley? Instead of checking on her phone in the morning, she decides not to do that. As Riley shows, you could just get in some good stretches and start your day fresh. Here we see Sally waiting for the bus to go to school. Technological advances such as buses and cars have contributed to a decline of physical activity and play an important role in the increase of inactive lifestyles. Such a lifestyle is associated with an increased risk of depression and anxiety. This is something Riley knows really well. By cycling, her endorphin levels increase. These endorphins work like an antidepressant made by your own body. This can lead to a positive mood, overall well-being, and an increased amount of energy. While cycling through the rain might decrease your mood on the short term, it will make you happier in the long term, so be loyal to your bike. A long day of going to school, you might be craving for some food. Sally here is using her laptop to buy her groceries online, filling her basket with all kinds of snacks. Technology made it possible for her to do this without leaving the house. All the groceries are just a click away. Although it is very convenient that every product that you can think of is just a click away, it may cause people to leave their house less. However, as Riley here will show you, grocery stores still exist. By going outdoors, she gets some exercise and produces extra vitamin D through exposure to the sun. People with depression have lower levels of vitamin D than people without a depression.
Technology has made it possible to overcome the obstacle of time and space. We can easily connect with friends and family that are away from us and communicate effectively with others. We can think that these technological breakthroughs have led us to be more socially adept. However, watching Netflix or TV for hours or using our smartphones excessively can cause people to be more distracted, stressed and isolated.
On the other hand, like Riley, those who spend time with family and friends regularly are less likely to show depressive symptoms.
Researchers have found that having limited face-to-face social contact increased the risk of having depression, as well as replacing face-to-face contact with friends and family with text messages and phone calls.
Sally and many others check their smartphone before they go to sleep. This blue artificial light makes you feel awake because your brain processes this light the same as sunlight. The light makes it harder to fall asleep, possibly resulting in sleeping problems, which can be a risk factor for depression. Reading a book, however, is relaxing and brings your body and brain in a relaxed mode, which makes it easier to fall asleep. As you can see, Riley knows this all too well. She knows she's gonna have a good night rest.
So is technology really our biggest enemy? Well, it doesn't have to be. There's hope on the horizon. Several technological interventions can help you with your mental health. For example, it is clinically tested that wake-up lights can re-establish a healthy sleep cycle, balance your hormones such as melatonin and cortisol, and harmonize your circadian rhythm. Another example is to use the self-help applications on your smartphone, which can help you to sleep better, reduce stress, be more relaxed, improve your physical health, and prevent smoking behaviors. Finally, exciting new treatments such as virtual reality exposure are being developed in order to help those that suffer from depression and anxiety. The fact that depression and anxiety are both developmental disorders, which means that there is not one single underlying cause, makes it very difficult to say what caused the increase. Excessive use of technology can partly be blamed for this, but technology can also be part of the solution. Just be aware of the risk that technology can bring to your mental health. So stay away from Sally and ride with Riley.